Hi creative friend, and welcome back to Thrifted Thursday, where we share 1 or 2 projects we've upcycled this week at Sustain My Craft Habit. This week we're transforming this thrift store tray into a raised pedestal for fall, as well as an unfinished wood sign into a key rack. So let's get started. My mother-in-law picked up this two-tone wood tray from the thrift store. It was from the Value Village, and I think she paid about $4.99. So I thought that this would be really cute to make into an elevated stand because she also found a bag of wood knobs that was $2.99, and there's about 2 dozen really cute wood knobs in there. So they would make really the perfect feet for a little stand. I started by painting it with 2 coats of white chalky paint and making sure that the coats dried fully in between. And this was going to make the foundation for some decoupage that I was planning to do. The design of the tray was pretty simple, so I thought it would be fun to add little glue dots all the way around the perimeter to give it a riveted finish. And so it took a little bit of time, but I just went around slowly with my hot glue, pressed it down, and then it made these really sweet little dots. While the glue was setting, I prepped the inner surface of the tray by giving it a coat of DecoArt decoupage glue so that it could dry, and then we will be doing an iron-on technique with a pretty fall-themed napkin. I then continued adding those glue dots all the way around. I did it in little sections. I then decided to add almost a driftwood effect to that outer rim of the tray. I used just a bit of black and gray paint and a dry brushing technique to go right around the rim. And this did such a nice job of accenting those little rivets that we created with the glue dots. Took a very little amount of paint and a light touch with my brush. You can see I just dabbed the brush into the paint and then wiped off the excess and then slowly went around over the surfaces, trying to use a light touch. And it really created this nice texture on the rim of the tray. Next, I made sure that the decoupage glue was completely dry in the center of the tray, and then used a little bit of that glue to tear the plies apart on this napkin that I picked up at the Dollar Tree here in Canada. And using just a single ply of the napkin, I placed it on the center of the tray. Once I was happy with the placement of the napkin, I used just a utility knife and carefully went around that little ridge and cut the napkin to size. This just took a little bit of time, but it worked really well overall to get a nice clean edge. Next, I placed a piece of parchment paper over the tray and then used my little hot iron to press that in place. The heat from the iron helps to fuse the napkin right into that decoupage glue that we put on before and let dry. And this is just such a nice way to get a clean, smooth finish, so quick and easy, way better than all those wrinkles that can happen otherwise. To seal the surface of the tray and keep it from getting stained, I simply applied a layer of this Dura Clear satin varnish, which is really easy to use. It's water cleanup, doesn't smell too much, and provides a nice durable finish. You can get it in different finishes such as matte or glossy. The one I used was a matte. Now it was time to add the feet onto my little tray. So as I mentioned, these, what we think must have been knobs, were picked up from the Value Village as well. There was about 2 dozen in this bag for $2.99, so we'll be crafting a lot with those. And then I picked out 4 of them and painted them white. I just used my brush, which had a little bit of gray on it, and so it ended up creating this really cute texture. To glue the feet onto the bottom of the tray, I used the Gorilla Glue, which provides great permanent adhesion, and then just a little bit of hot glue to hold the knobs in place until the Gorilla Glue has a chance to bond, which takes about 2 hours. And that's it. I'm so happy with how I was able to transform this dated wood tray into a beautiful fall themed raised platform or raised tray that I can use to put on all sorts of little embellishments or just leave as it is on my dining room table. For the second craft this week, I used this unfinished wood sign, I guess it was. I guess you could make it into a tray as well, but I decided to transform it into a key rack, a fall-themed key rack to go in my front entryway. I did this makeover on a Facebook Live and asked my audience to decide whether we were going to place on the cornucopia or the gnome, and the cornucopia came out as the clear choice. Now, I printed out this cornucopia design on my inkjet printer at home, and I was keen to try the decoupage transfer onto the wood surface. Last week we did a similar transfer, but with a black phrase, and I was really curious to see if it was going to work with the colored image. This design you can find over at sustainmycrafthabit.com as a free printable, so be sure to grab that if you like it for your fall crafting. The cornucopia design has a really pretty teal pumpkin in there, and so we were playing off of that with the rest of this piece. I started by painting the whole thing with this really pretty blue, gray blue color called Vintage by DecoArt. It's a chalky finish paint. And I had this idea to crackle some white paint on the center panel. To create the crackle, I applied a good coat of white Elmer's school glue. You can use clear Elmer's glue as well. It does work. I have done it in the past. So I just spread that glue around to create an even coat over the entire surface. Next, I used my heat tool to help dry the glue just a little bit for about 10-15 seconds. You want the glue to still be wet when you're doing the crackle technique. That's what helps the crackling work. So while that glue was still wet, I applied a generous coat of white chalky paint over top. And you can already see that on that top panel, we have some crackling happening, which really took on its own life once I applied a little bit of air to help dry the paint and glue. And it's that reaction between the paint and the wet glue that creates all those lines and beautiful cracks. This is just such a fun way to add texture and dimension to any craft for the background. Once I was happy with how dry the paint was, I went ahead and cut out around my design and then applied decoupage glue to the front surface of the design. If you have an image with directionality, such as a phrase, you want to make sure that you flip the image before printing it so that when you apply it to your surface, you'll be flipping it face down, that it will come out the right way. Okay, so once I placed my image where I wanted it to go, I pressed it down and then let it dry overnight. So the next morning, it was going to be the moment of truth about whether this technique would work. I used some water and a cloth and wet the paper, and then slowly with the cloth started scrubbing away at the paper to remove it. I was so happy to see that my image was staying put on the wood sign and just the paper backing was scrubbing off. I was so excited with the fact that this was working, and look how beautiful that image is coming through, being revealed from the other side. I was thinking about all the different types of crafts and images that I could use in future projects. So this is definitely going to be a technique that we'll use more often. I did have the one that we did in last week's video using just the black phrase, but this was so fun with the beautiful colors in this design. After the water dries, you may find that your image dulls a bit. It's okay to go over it again one more time with the wet rag again and then let that dry. And as you'll see at the very end, I'm actually going to apply a coat of sealer, which also helps to bring out the vividness of the color. Okay, so now that the image transfer has worked, I thought it'd be fun to add a buffalo check design to the side panels. This is a really fun technique. We have a photo tutorial for how to do this over at sustainmycrafthabit.com. But basically you're going to use tape. The tape I'm using here is 3/4 inches wide. And first we'll start by taping off vertical stripes. And you can use the tape itself to make sure that those stripes are even. Next, I blended a little bit of my blue paint with some white paint to make a lighter shade of it, and then painted that over the stripes that were not covered by the tape. After letting that dry completely, I removed those pieces of tape and set them aside because we will use them again in a next step. I think this even looks super cute with just the vertical stripes, but we're going to keep going to create our buffalo check. So now we'll use that tape off horizontal stripes, using again the bit of tape to help with the placement so that it's an even size. And I'm going to repeat that on both sides of the panel. Then once the tape is in place, I'll use the same blended shade of blue as I did for the vertical stripes and paint those horizontal stripes. So you got to kind of trust the process because at this point it's hard to see what's going to be happening, but I promise it's going to look beautiful. So I'm just repeating this on the other side now. Now you'll want to make sure that your paint is dry and then go back and put your original strips of tape again on the same spots that you had them before. This is really important. You want to try to keep track of where you put those original vertical stripes and put the tape down there. Once those vertical strips of tape are back in place, you'll just go with some white paint and fill in the squares that are left over. Now for the fun part. It's time to remove all that tape, and look how beautiful this buffalo check pattern is. It didn't look like much as we were doing it, but again, it turned out so cute. Our craft is nearly done. I just added a couple of embellishments such as some faux greenery and some green and blue dyed Sola wood flowers. After drilling a pilot hole, I simply screwed in these cup hooks that I had ordered off of Amazon. I'll leave the link for those in the description. And then finally, just to help bring out the color and protect the surface of the image, I applied a coat of Duraclear sealer. And that's it. I have a beautiful new sign for fall that I can have in my front entryway, and also will do double duty as a key rack. It was so fun doing the crackle technique, the image transfer, and painting the buffalo checks. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed these 2 upcycling projects. And be sure to like and subscribe for more nature-inspired DIY craft ideas. Let us know in the comments below which was your favorite this week. Take care. Bye.